I was bleeding internally in the back of an Uber when my mother finally picked up her phone. Sweetie, can this wait? We're at Madison's sleepover venue and the caterer is, oh, honey, show mommy the balloon arch. Mom. My voice cracked, tasting copper. I'm going to the emergency room. The pain, something ruptured. I need you to. Ruptured? Emma, don't be so dramatic. You know how important tonight is for your sister. Just take some Tylenol and. Madison, stop spinning. I'll check on you when we get home, okay? Love you. The line went dead. I stared at my phone screen, watching my sister's Instagram story update in real time. Madison, 16 and radiant, surrounded by 20 screaming friends in matching silk pajamas. My mother, beaming, positioning herself in every shot. My father, probably writing the check for the private chef. The Uber driver's eyes found mine in the rearview mirror. Miss, you don't look good. Should I go faster? I nodded, pressing my hand harder against my abdomen. The pain had started 3 days ago, a dull ache I'd mentioned at breakfast. My mother had been reviewing Madison's sleepover checklist. My father had been on a conference call. Madison had rolled her eyes and said, Emma always has something wrong with her when I have events. That was the moment, I think. The moment my appendix decided to kill me. But here's what they didn't know. Couldn't know. I was dying for the second time. In my first life, I'd made it to the hospital too late. Peritonitis, septic shock. I'd spent 3 days in the ICU while my family stayed at Madison's sleepover, then attended the after-party brunch. They'd arrived at the hospital with Madison's leftover party favors, custom lip glosses with her face on them, and seemed genuinely surprised that I was on a ventilator. I'd died at 19 alone, with Madison's smiling face printed on a tube of lip gloss sitting on my bedside table. Then I'd woken up at 15, 4 years earlier, in my childhood bedroom with my sister's music blaring through the walls and my mother's voice calling us down for breakfast. The Uber pulled up to the ER entrance. I paid through the app and stumbled inside, leaving a small trail of vomit behind me. A nurse took one look at my gray face and rushed me through triage. This time I'd survive. This time I knew exactly what was coming. And this time I would never, ever forgive them. Let me tell you about the Yang family. On the surface, we were perfect. My father, Richard Yang, was a successful commercial real estate developer. My mother, Patricia, ran a lifestyle blog with 200K followers. Madison was the golden child, beautiful, popular, talented. And I was Emma, the forgettable eldest daughter who existed primarily to make Madison look better. It hadn't always been this way. Or maybe it had, and I'd been too young to notice. My earliest memory, I was 6, Madison was 3. I'd won second place in a regional piano competition. I'd practiced for months, my small fingers struggling with the Chopin piece. When I came home with my ribbon, my mother had glanced at it and said, "Second place? Well, there's always next year." Madison had toddled over and grabbed the ribbon. My mother had laughed and taken a photo of Madison wearing it. That photo still hung in our living room, captioned, "Madison's first award." When I was 8, I'd made the mistake of being better than Madison at something. I'd scored higher on a standardized test. My father had frowned at my score sheet and said, "These tests don't mean anything anyway." Then he'd taken Madison out for ice cream because she'd tried her best. I'd learned quickly that excellence without Madison's blessing was disappointment. Mediocrity that didn't threaten her was acceptable. And needing anything, attention, money, time, when Madison wanted something was unforgivable. By the time I was 15, I'd perfected the art of being invisible. I'd stopped showing my parents my report cards, straight A's, but Madison got B's, so praising me felt like criticizing her. I'd stopped asking for new clothes. Madison needed a prom dress every month, apparently. I'd stopped mentioning my acceptance into the advanced science program. Madison had just been cut from the volleyball team and was going through something. I'd even stopped mentioning when I felt sick. In my first life, that silence had killed me. The appendicitis had started as a stomach ache on a Tuesday. I'd mentioned it casually at dinner. Madison had immediately announced that she needed the house empty on Friday for her sleepover, the social event of the year, apparently. 30 girls, a professional photographer, custom everything. My mother had spent the next 3 days planning. My father had spent them writing checks. Madison had spent them creating a Pinterest board, I'd spent them dying. By Friday evening, when I could barely stand, I'd called an Uber myself. I hadn't wanted to ruin Madison's night. Even dying, I'd been worried about being an inconvenience. That Emma had been a fool. The ER surgeon had been blunt. Another hour and you'd be dead. Where the hell is your family? I'd lied and said they were on their way. They'd arrived 48 hours later, annoyed that I was still hospitalized, upset that they'd had to miss Madison's after-party brunch. My mother had actually said, "Emma, you could have waited until Sunday to have this emergency." I died 3 days later, my body too poisoned to recover. But here was the gift of rebirth. I'd woken up 4 years earlier with every memory intact. I remembered the pain, the loneliness, the sight of Madison's Instagram stories playing on a loop while I coded on the operating table. I remembered my mother's irritation, my father's disappointment, Madison's complete indifference. I remembered everything, and I'd been given a second chance to rewrite it all. The first year after Rebirth, I tried to change things. I tried to be better, more noticeable, more worthy of their attention. I'd won awards, made honor roll, volunteered. Nothing worked. Madison remained the sun, and I remained invisible. The second year, I tried to build a case. I documented every dismissal, every forgotten promise, every time they'd chosen her over me. I'd planned to confront them, to force them to see the pattern. But I'd realized something crucial. They already knew. They'd chosen this. Every single time, they'd looked at both their daughters and decided one was worth more than the other. The third year, I'd started planning my revenge. By the fourth year, the year I was now living again, the year I would have died, I was ready. The surgeon who saved my life this time was Dr. Michelle Park, a woman with tired eyes and competent hands. She'd removed my appendix laparoscopically, treated the early peritonitis, and sat beside my bed in recovery with remarkable gentleness. "You got here just in time," she said. "Another few hours." "I know," I said. "I've done this before." She'd looked at me strangely, but didn't press. My family arrived 36 hours after my surgery. Madison's sleepover had ended that morning, followed by the goodbye brunch, followed by the post-brunch photo shoot. My mother rushed in with practiced concern, her phone already recording for her Instagram story. "Oh, my baby, I was so worried. The doctors wouldn't tell us anything over the phone." Lie. I'd put them as emergency contacts. The hospital had called 6 times. My father patted my hand awkwardly. "You gave us quite a scare, kiddo." "But you're okay now, right? The doctor said you're fine?" Madison hung back, scrolling through her phone, occasionally glancing up to make sure she wasn't in any of Mom's videos. "I almost died," I said flatly. "But you didn't." My mother's smile was bright, plastic. "Thank God. Now we should talk about when you can come home. The nurses said maybe tomorrow? Perfect, because we have Madison's award ceremony on Wednesday, and Madison's what?" "The volleyball team is honoring her for best spirit, even though she got cut," my father explained. "We bought a whole table for the ceremony. You'll be recovered enough to come, right?" I looked at them, really looked at them. My mother, already thinking about the next photo opportunity. My father, already calculating the cost-benefit of my medical crisis versus Madison's schedule. Madison, not even pretending to care that I'd been in surgery. In my first life, I'd said yes. I'd checked myself out of the hospital early, attended Madison's ceremony, smiled for the photos. I'd died 2 days later because I'd been too weak to fight the infection. "No," I said. My mother blinked. "What?" "No, I won't be there. I'm staying in the hospital until the doctors clear me. I'm not leaving early for Madison's ceremony." "Emma." My father's voice had that warning tone. "Don't be selfish." Something crystallized in my chest, sharp and bright as glass. This was it. This was the turning point my rebirth had given me. "Get out," I said quietly. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my room, all of you." My mother's face cycled through shock, anger, and finally landed on martyred sadness. "Honey, I know you're in pain, but there's no need to—" "You chose a sleepover over my surgery," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building in my throat. I called you while I was bleeding internally, and you told me to take Tylenol because Madison's balloon arch was more important than my life. That's not fair, Madison spoke up for the first time. You always do this. You always make everything about you when I have important events. I laughed, the sound bitter and broken. Your sleepover was more important than my life. Your volleyball ceremony is more important than my recovery. When exactly am I allowed to matter? Emma, stop being dramatic, my father snapped. You're fine. You had a routine surgery and now you're milking it for attention. I have peritonitis. I could have died. I stopped myself. I couldn't tell them I had died. Not yet. I almost died because you wouldn't pick up the phone. Well, you didn't die, my mother said, her voice sharp now, the Instagram-worthy concern evaporating. And now you're trying to ruin Madison's special week with your usual pity party. We've dealt with this for years, Emma, this constant bid for attention, this need to compete with your sister. Get out. Dr. Park appeared in the doorway like an avenging angel. I'm going to have to ask you to leave. My patient needs rest. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but Dr. Park's expression stopped her. Now. They left. Madison shot me a look of pure venom. My mother was already composing her next Instagram post, something about difficult family moments that would generate sympathy. My father was checking his phone. Dr. Park closed the door behind them and sat beside my bed again. Family trouble? Something like that. She studied me with those tired, knowing eyes. Emma, I'm going to tell you something. When you came in, you were hours from death. Not exaggerating, hours. And when we couldn't reach your emergency contacts, the nurses tried 6 different times. The last time your mother picked up and said, she checked her tablet. We're at an event. Just admit her and send us the bill. The words hung in the air between us. I see a lot of sick kids, Dr. Park continued, but I've never seen a family take 36 hours to come see their daughter after emergency surgery. Not once. I felt tears building, hot and humiliating. They chose her sleepover. I know. They always choose her. I know. And they're going to get away with it. They're going to go home and tell everyone I'm being dramatic and everyone will believe them because they're the perfect Yang family and I'm just the difficult daughter. Dr. Park was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, what if they didn't get away with it? I looked at her sharply. What? I'm a mandated reporter, Emma. What you're describing, chronic neglect, medical neglect, emotional abuse, I'm required by law to document it. It won't matter. They'll charm their way out of it. They always do. Maybe, Dr. Park said. Or maybe this time you let the system work, you let people help you, and you stop protecting them. In my first life, I'd protected them until the day I died. I'd made excuses, minimized the abuse, convinced myself it wasn't that bad. I'd been so desperate for their love that I'd accepted crumbs and called it a feast. But I had died. I had been reborn, and I was done protecting people who would have let me bang for a balloon arch. Make your report, I said. Dr. Park nodded and stood. Emma, one more thing. You mentioned earlier that you'd done this before. What did you mean? I looked at her tired, kind eyes and made a decision. In another life, I said slowly, I didn't call the Uber fast enough. I waited for them to come home. By the time they did, it was too late. I died in the ICU while they were at Madison's after-party brunch. Dr. Park didn't laugh or call me crazy. She just nodded slowly, like I'd confirmed something she'd suspected. Then this time, she said, let's make sure you live. The CPS investigation started quietly. A social worker came to interview me in the hospital. I told her everything, the piano ribbon, the test scores, the pattern of neglect. I showed her the texts I'd saved, my mother ignoring my calls during the appendicitis, Madison's Instagram stories posted while I was in surgery, my father's Venmo history showing thousands spent on Madison while my requests for school supplies went ignored. In my first life, I'd had no evidence. This time I'd been collecting it for 3 years. The social worker's face had grown grimmer with each piece of evidence. Emma, how long has this been going on? My entire life. And you've never told anyone? Who would believe me? They're the perfect family. I'm just the ungrateful daughter. She'd closed her tablet and looked at me directly. I believe you. Those 3 words broke something in me. I cried for the first time since my rebirth. Not pretty tears, but ugly, gasping sobs. The social worker held my hand and didn't say anything, just let me cry out 15 years of accumulated pain. When I finally stopped, she said, I'm going to recommend you be placed with a relative or in foster care while we investigate. Is there anyone you'd like to stay with? I'd been waiting for this question. My grandmother, my father's mother. Your father mentioned she passed away. She didn't. They told everyone she did because she disapproved of how they were raising us. She's alive and living in Oregon. Here's her number. The social worker had stared at me. Your parents faked their mother's death? To avoid the inconvenience of her criticism, yes. This right here was my ace in the hole. In my first life, I'd discovered Grandmother Yang was alive entirely by accident. A letter forwarded to me after I'd already died, found among my belongings. But in this life, I'd tracked her down 2 years ago. We'd been corresponding in secret ever since. Grandmother Yang was a force of nature, a retired federal judge with the resources and temperament to destroy anyone who harmed her family. She'd cut off my parents after they'd refused to let her see me and Madison, claiming she was too harsh and didn't understand modern parenting. They'd told everyone she'd died in a car accident. They'd even held a fake funeral. When the social worker called her number, Grandmother Yang answered on the first ring. Is she safe? Were her first words. Yes, ma'am. Your granddaughter is safe. And my son, is he in custody yet? The social worker had looked stunned. Ma'am, we're just beginning the investigation. I've been waiting for this call for 10 years. Tell Emma I'm flying out tonight. Tell her she's never going back to that house. And tell my son, her voice had turned to ice, that his inheritance is now Emma's, every penny. I told him if he hurt my granddaughter, he'd regret it. He chose not to believe me. Grandmother Yang arrived like a 5'2" hurricane in Chanel. She swept into my hospital room, took one look at me, and pulled me into her arms. My girl, she whispered. My brave, brilliant girl. I've got you now. For the first time in either of my lives, I felt safe. Over the next week, while I recovered in the hospital with my grandmother at my bedside, the investigation exploded. Dr. Park's report had been damning. The social worker's interviews with my teachers revealed years of missed parent-teacher conferences, forgotten permission slips, and a child who brought her own lunch because her parents forgot to give her money. Madison's teachers, by contrast, reported that my parents were at every event, donated generously, and were extremely involved. The difference was stark enough to be criminal. But the real bombshell came when my grandmother hired a forensic accountant to review my parents' finances. She'd suspected financial abuse, and she'd been right. My father had opened a college fund for each daughter when we were born. Grandmother Yang had contributed $50,000 to each fund. Over the years, she'd sent birthday and holiday checks for each of us, always equal amounts. Madison's fund had grown to $400,000. Mine had $3,000. My parents had been systematically stealing from my college fund to pay for Madison's lifestyle. Private coaching, designer clothes, that sleepover, all paid for with money that was legally mine. They'd drained my fund completely and had started on the principal. It was embezzlement from a minor by her own parents. When the police showed up to arrest my parents, Madison had been recording a TikTok. The video of my mother being let out in handcuffs had gone viral within hours. My father's business partners had started distancing themselves immediately. Madison's friends had stopped returning her calls. The perfect Yang family shattered like glass. I was discharged from the hospital after 8 days. Grandmother Yang took me home, not to my parents' house, but to her sprawling Oregon estate where I'd be staying until this mess is sorted out. The estate was everything my childhood home wasn't. warm, quiet, filled with books instead of Instagram opportunities. My grandmother gave me the entire East Wing and told me I could do whatever I wanted with it. This is your home now, she said firmly, "Asi, for as long as you want it." I'd slept for nearly 24 hours straight, the deepest sleep I'd had in either lifetime. When I woke, my grandmother was sitting in an armchair by my window, reading. "How long have you been there?" I asked. "Long enough to make sure you're really sleeping, not just pretending so you don't bother anyone." I sat up slowly, my incisions pulling. "You knew about how they treated me." I suspected. When they cut me off 10 years ago, I knew something was wrong, but I couldn't prove it, and I couldn't force my way back into your life without making things worse for you. Her eyes were fierce. "I've been waiting for you to be old enough to reach out on your own. When I got your letter 2 years ago, I nearly flew out that day. But you asked me to wait, to let you gather evidence. So I waited. I needed proof," I said. "I needed people to see what they were really like. And now they do." We sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then I asked, "What happens now?" "Now," my grandmother smiled, sharp as a blade, "now we destroy them." The trial was supposed to be quiet. Family court, sealed records, a judge who would slap my parents' wrists and order counseling. My grandmother had other plans. She'd hired the best lawyers in the country, not just for my case, but to file a simultaneous civil suit for embezzlement, emotional abuse, and a dozen other charges. She'd leaked the case details to the press. She'd used every connection from her 40 years as a judge to make sure this case became national news. "You wanted them to see the truth," she told me. "Now everyone will see it." The media loved the story. Wealthy, photogenic family exposed as abusive frauds. My mother's Instagram followers started digging through old posts, finding receipts. People noticed that I was barely in any family photos, that when I did appear, I was always positioned in the back, out of focus, cropped out. One of Madison's friends came forward with screenshots of Madison mocking me in their group chat. "Emma's probably faking sick again," one message read. "She's so desperate for attention." This was sent while I was in the ICU, dying. My father's business? Partners sued him, citing the embezzlement as evidence of moral turpitude that violated their partnership agreements. His company's stock plummeted. My mother's sponsors dropped her. Her Instagram was deleted after she was bombarded with thousands of comments calling her a monster mother. Madison was expelled from her private school. The volleyball team's Best Spirit Award was rescinded. Her college applications were all rejected. Not because of grades, but because the admissions officers had seen the news. They fell apart faster than I could have imagined. But the real climax came in the courtroom. The criminal trial for embezzlement was public. My grandmother made sure of it. She wanted everyone to see exactly what my parents had done. I took the stand and told my story. All of it. The piano ribbon, the college fund, the appendicitis. I showed the jury my medical records, the 6 attempted phone calls from the hospital, my mother's response about just admitting me. I showed them Madison's Instagram stories, posted while I was in surgery, geotags and timestamps proving exactly where they were while I almost died. I told them about my first life. Not directly, I couldn't say I'd been reborn, but I told them what would have happened if I had waited for them instead of calling that Uber. The doctors testified that I would have died within hours, that if I'd trusted my parents to come home, I'd be dead. "They killed me," I said quietly. "Maybe not in this life, but in the life that mattered most, the one where I believed they loved me. They killed me. They chose a balloon arch over their daughter's life." My mother was crying. My father looked defeated. Madison sat beside them, probably wondering if she could still salvage her TikTok account. The jury deliberated for 45 minutes, guilty on all counts. The judge, a woman about my grandmother's age, had removed her glasses and stared at my parents for a long, heavy moment. "In my 30 years on the bench," she said, I have never seen such callous disregard for a child's welfare by the people who should have protected her most. You stole from your daughter. You neglected her medical needs to the point of near death. You emotionally abused her for her entire childhood. And when confronted with the evidence, you have shown no remorse." She sentenced my father to 5 years in federal prison for embezzlement. My mother got 3 years plus supervised probation. Both lost custody permanently. Both were ordered to repay the $400,000 stolen from my college fund plus damages plus interest. The total came to $1.2 million. They were also ordered to liquidate their assets to pay it. The house, the cars, the designer clothes, all of it went to auction. Madison, 18 and technically an adult, wasn't charged criminally, but the civil suit hit her too. The court ruled that since she'd been the primary beneficiary of the stolen money, she had to return it. The volleyball day, coaching, the private school tuition, the sleepover. The court traced every dollar back to my stolen college fund. Madison had to repay $350,000. She had nothing. She'd never worked, never saved, never had to. She filed for bankruptcy before the ink on the judgment was dry. The court also granted my grandmother full guardianship of me, despite me being 16. They cited the severity of the abuse and the need for a stable, loving environment during the victim's recovery. On the day my parents were taken into custody, I stood outside the courthouse with my grandmother. Reporters swarmed, shouting questions. One of them called out, "Emma, what do you want people to know?" I looked directly into the camera. "I want people to know that children are not accessories. We're not props for your social media. We're not second-best consolation prizes when your favorite child needs something. And when we tell you we're sick, we're dying, we need help, you don't get to choose whether that's convenient for you." I paused, letting the words sink in. My parents chose my sister's sleepover over my surgery. They chose a balloon arch over my life. And when I survived anyway, when I fought my way out of that hospital bed and refused to disappear quietly, they called me dramatic. They called me selfish. They called me ungrateful. The cameras were all on me now, every lens focused. "But I'm none of those things," I said. "I'm a survivor. And I want every child watching this who feels invisible, who feels like they're never enough, who's been told they're overreacting. You're not crazy. You're not too much. You deserve better." I looked directly at the camera. And to the parents out there who have a favorite child, your other child knows. They've always known. And one day, they'll stop trying to earn your love. One day, they'll walk away, and you'll deserve the loneliness that follows. My grandmother squeezed my hand. Behind us, I could see my mother being loaded into a transport van, still crying. Madison was being mobbed by former friends who'd come to watch the spectacle. My father looked smaller somehow, diminished. I felt nothing for them. Not hatred, not satisfaction, not even pity. Just relief that it was over. 3 years later, I stood on the stage at Stanford University, accepting my diploma. The scholarship had been easy to get once my story became public. Every major university had wanted the girl who survived the Yang family. I'd chosen Stanford because it was 3,000 miles from anyone who'd ever hurt me. My grandmother sat in the front row, beaming. Beside her were Dr. Park and the social worker who'd saved me, both of whom I'd stayed in touch with. Behind them were friends I'd made, real friends, who liked me for myself, not because I was related to someone more interesting. Madison was not there. Last I'd heard, she was working retail in Florida, living in a studio apartment, still trying to rebuild her social media following. She'd posted once about my sister who destroyed our family. The comments had eviscerated her. My parents were also absent. My father had been released after 3 years for good behavior. My mother had served 18 months. Neither had attempted to contact me. The restraining order might have had something to do with that. The house had sold for $2.3 million. After paying back my college fund with interest and covering legal fees, there'd been enough left over for me to start a nonprofit, the Second Chance Foundation, dedicated to helping abused children escape toxic families. Dr. Park was on the board. The social worker ran the day-to-day operations. My grandmother had donated the seed money, and I was the face of it, living proof that you could survive, thrive, and build something beautiful from the ashes of abuse. After graduation, my grandmother threw a party at her estate. Small, intimate, just the people who mattered. "Speech!" someone called out. I climbed onto a chair, laughing. Okay. So 4 years ago, I almost died. Actually, 4 years ago in another life, I did die. I died alone in a hospital bed while my family partied at my sister's sleepover. The room had gone quiet. But I got a second chance. I got to come back, to fight back, to refuse to be invisible anymore. And I learned something important. You can't make people love you. You can't earn it by being perfect, by being quiet, by needing nothing and giving everything. Love doesn't work like that. I found my grandmother in the crowd. But real love, the kind worth having, that's different. Real love shows up. Real love answers the phone when you're dying. Real love doesn't make you compete for scraps. I raised my glass. To second chances, to the people who help us survive them, and to never, ever settling for crumbs when you deserve the whole damn feast. Hear, hear, everyone chorused. Later that night, after everyone had left, my grandmother and I sat on the patio watching the stars. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked. "Going to war with your parents? Some people would say you should have forgiven them, given them another chance." I thought about it carefully. In my first life, I gave them chance after chance. I forgave them every day. I made myself smaller and quieter and less troublesome, thinking that if I could just be easy enough, they'd love me. And it killed me. I looked at her. In this life, I chose myself. I chose survival. I chose justice. And I don't regret it for a second. "Good," my grandmother said firmly, "because you deserved better. You always did." We sat in comfortable silence, and I thought about the girl I'd been. Both versions. The girl who'd died waiting for a love that would never come. The girl who'd been reborn and decided to fight. I'd won. Completely, totally won. I had my money back, my degree, my freedom. I had people who loved me, a future I'd built myself, a life worth living. My parents had nothing. Madison had nothing. The perfect Yang family was destroyed, and I was the one who'd destroyed it. Some people might call it revenge. I called it justice. But honestly, the best part wasn't their downfall. It wasn't the trial or the money or the vindication. The best part was this. I was happy. Genuinely, fully happy in a way I'd never been in my first life. I woke up every morning excited for the day. I had plans, dreams, people who cared if I lived or died. I had a grandmother who loved me unconditionally. I had a purpose. And I'd learned the most important lesson. You can't make people see your worth. But you can make sure the people who refuse to see it pay the price. Years later, I got a letter from Madison. It was forwarded through lawyers. She wasn't allowed to contact me directly because of the restraining order. The letter was long, rambling, desperate. She was sorry. She hadn't understood. She'd been young and stupid. She wanted a relationship with her sister. She wanted to explain that she'd been conditioned by our parents too, that she was a victim, just like me. She wanted forgiveness. I read the letter twice, then filed it in a folder with all the other letters she'd sent over the years. 17 letters, each one more desperate than the last. Each one asking for absolution I had no interest in giving. I never responded. My mother wrote too, occasionally. Her letters were different, full of justifications and explanations. She'd been depressed. She'd been overwhelmed. Madison had been easier to love because she was more like her. I'd been difficult, challenging, always needing something. She never actually said sorry. My father never wrote at all. I didn't need their apologies anyway. I'd stopped waiting for them to understand what they'd done. People like that, people who could steal from their child, who could ignore their daughter's pain for a balloon arch, they'd never understand. And I'd never care. On my 25th birthday, my grandmother threw another party. Dr. Park was there, now a close friend. The social worker brought her wife. My Stanford friends came, my nonprofit board members, people I'd helped through the Second Chance Foundation. We were in the middle of dinner when someone's phone buzzed with a news alert. Madison Yang, formerly of the infamous Yang family child abuse case, had been arrested for credit card fraud. The table went silent. "Should we?" Someone started. "No," I said firmly. "We're not talking about her. Not today. Not ever. She made her choices. She's living with them." My grandmother raised her glass. "To Emma. To survival. To choosing yourself." "To choosing yourself," everyone echoed. I looked around the table at these people, my real family, the one I'd built myself, and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Not for what I'd lost, but for what I'd gained. That night, alone in my room, I allowed myself to think about Madison one last time. In my first life, she'd inherited everything after I died. My college fund, whatever was left of it. Our parents' love, the family legacy. She'd gone on to college, gotten married, probably had kids. She'd lived the golden life our parents had always planned for her, and I'd been dead at 19, unmourned and forgotten. In this life, I'd taken it all: the money, the future, the victory. I'd taken everything she'd stolen from me and everything she'd been given that should have been mine. I'd burned their perfect family to the ground and built my own from the ashes. Madison had nothing. My parents had nothing. They were broken, scattered, ruined. And I was thriving. Some people might say I should feel guilty. That revenge is wrong. That I should have been the bigger person. That family is family. Those people could fuck right off. I'd died once being the bigger person. I died forgiving them, making excuses for them, protecting them from the consequences of their own cruelty. In this life, I'd chosen differently. I'd chosen to live, and that meant they had to lose. I pulled out my journal, the one I'd been keeping since my rebirth, and wrote one final entry. Dear past Emma, you died waiting for them to love you. You died believing you weren't enough. You died thinking that if you could just be better, quieter, less needy, they'd finally see you. I'm here to tell you that you were enough. You were always enough. They were the ones who were broken. I'm living the life you deserved. I'm happy in a way you never got to be. I'm loved by people who chose me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And the people who killed you, they're paying for it every single day. Thank you for dying. Thank you for giving me this second chance. Thank you for teaching me that some people aren't worth saving. I'm living for both of us now. Love, Emma. I closed the journal and put it away. In the morning, I had a meeting with the senator about expanding the Second Chance Foundation nationwide. Next week, I was keynoting a conference on child advocacy. Next month, I was starting my PhD in psychology, focused on family trauma and resilience. I had a full life ahead of me, a life I'd earned, fought for, deserved, and somewhere out there my parents and Madison were living with the consequences of believing I didn't matter. They'd chosen her sleepover over my surgery, so I'd chosen my survival over their destruction. And I'd never, not even for a second, regret it. 10 years after my rebirth, I stood in front of Congress testifying about child abuse legislation. The Second Chance Foundation had helped thousands of children escape toxic families. We'd pushed for laws protecting children's financial assets from parental theft. We'd trained social workers to recognize patterns of favoritism and emotional abuse. We'd changed the system that had almost let me die. During a break, a young woman approached me. She was maybe 20, nervous, clutching a folder. Dr. Yang, I'm Madison, your sister. I looked at her, really looked. She was thinner than I remembered, harder somehow. Her clothes were cheap but clean. No designer labels, no Instagram filter glow, just a woman who'd spent 10 years paying for her complicity in someone else's abuse. I don't have a sister, I said quietly. Please, I just need 5 minutes. I've been clean for 3 years. Clean? Pills. I got addicted after everything fell apart. But I'm better now. I'm in therapy. I'm trying to make amends. She held out the folder. I wrote down everything. Every time I was cruel to you, every time I stood by while they hurt you, every time I benefited from your pain. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see it now. I see what we did to you. I didn't take the folder. Madison, do you know what the worst part was? I asked. It wasn't the neglect or the theft or even the sleepover. It was that you knew. You all knew exactly what you were doing, and you chose it anyway. Every single day, you chose to hurt me. I was a kid. You were 16 when I almost died. 16. Old enough to know that your sleepover wasn't more important than my life. But you didn't care. You've never cared. I care now? No, I cut her off. You regret the consequences now. You regret losing your life of luxury, your followers, your easy path. But you don't actually care about me. If you did, you would have cared 10 years ago when it mattered. Madison's face crumpled. What do you want from me? I've lost everything. My friends, my family, my future. I worked 2 jobs just to afford my apartment. I'll never have the life I could have had. Good, I said simply. That's exactly what should have happened. You're so cold now, she whispered. What happened to you? I smiled, and it wasn't kind. You did? All of you. You happened to me. And I decided I'd rather be cold and alive than warm and dead. I walked away, leaving her standing there with her folder of apologies I'd never read. That night, I called my grandmother. Madison found me today, I said. Oh, how did that go? I walked away. Good girl. Grandma, do you think I'm cold? Heartless? She was quiet for a moment. Emma, let me tell you something. When I was young, I was a prosecutor. I put away rapists, murderers, child abusers, and people used to tell me I was cold, heartless, that I should have more compassion. Do you know what I told them? What? I told them that protecting the innocent requires being unmoved by the tears of the guilty. Your parents and sister destroyed your childhood. They stole from you, neglected you, almost killed you. And now that they face consequences, they want compassion? She laughed, sharp and bitter. They can want. They deserve nothing. And you owe them less than nothing. I don't feel guilty, I admitted. Is that wrong? They're suffering and I feel nothing. That's not nothing, darling. That's justice. That's survival. That's proof that you've healed enough to stop lighting yourself on fire to keep them warm. After we hung up, I sat in my hotel room looking out at the DC skyline. Tomorrow, I'd testify again. My words would help pass legislation protecting children like I'd been. The Second Chance Foundation would expand. More kids would escape. More abusers would face consequences. I'd built all of this from the ashes of my first life. And yes, Madison was right. I was cold now. Cold and hard and unforgiving. But I was alive. And in the end, that was the only revenge that mattered. Surviving them, thriving after them, and building a life so beautiful that their absence didn't even register as a loss. 15 years after my rebirth, I published a memoir. After Rebirth, a survivor's story. It detailed everything, the abuse, the neglect, the appendicitis, the trial, the aftermath. It became a bestseller within weeks. The book tour was exhausting but satisfying. At every event, people came up to me with their own stories. Children who'd been scapegoated by their families, adults who'd finally cut off toxic parents, people who'd been told they were dramatic, sensitive, too much. You gave me permission to walk away, one woman told me, crying. I thought I had to keep trying to earn my mother's love. But reading your book, I realized she's never going to love me. Not the way I need. So I stopped trying, and I'm happier now than I've ever been. That was why I'd written it. Not for Madison or my parents to read and feel sorry, but for everyone else out there who'd been taught that love means suffering, that family means endurance, that forgiveness is mandatory. During one event, a reporter asked, "Do you have any regrets? Anything you wish you'd done differently?" I thought about it carefully. In my first life, I regret everything. I regret being quiet, being small, being endlessly forgiving. I regret dying without ever telling them how much they hurt me. And in this life, I regret nothing. Not the trial, not the restraining order, not refusing Madison's letters. I regret nothing because everything I did was in service of one goal, staying alive. Even though it meant destroying your family? They destroyed themselves, I corrected. I just refused to die quietly while they did it. The question everyone asked, though, was always the same. Do you think they've changed? Do you think they understand now what they did? My answer never varied. I don't know and I don't care. Their growth, their redemption, their understanding, none of that is my responsibility. I'm not their teacher, their therapist, or their path to absolution. I'm the child they abused, and I'm under no obligation to help them become better people. But what about forgiveness? Someone always asked. Don't you want to forgive them and move on? I have moved on, I'd say. Moving on doesn't require forgiveness, it requires building a life so full that their absence isn't a loss. After one event, an older woman waited until the crowd cleared. She approached slowly, carefully, like she was afraid I'd bolt. Dr. Yang, I'm someone's mother. I think I'm your mother. Not literally, but I think I've been failing one of my children the way your parents failed you. I set down my pen. Go on. I have 3 kids. 2 of them are easy, social, athletic, high achieving. My youngest is quiet, sensitive, always reading, always in her own world. And I've realized, listening to you talk, that I don't make the same effort with her. I don't go to her things. I don't ask about her interests. And when she tries to tell me things, I'm always distracted by her siblings. Tears were running down her face. I don't want to be your mother. I don't want my daughter to write a book like this in 20 years. But I don't know how to change. This was the moment I'd been waiting for, the moment that made all of this worthwhile. First, I said, acknowledge it to her. Don't make excuses, don't minimize it. Just tell her, I've been failing you and I'm sorry. Second, change. Action, not words. Show up to her events. Learn about her interest. Make her feel seen. Third, be patient. You've hurt her. Healing takes time. She might not believe you at first. She might test you. Let her. Prove you mean it. And if it's too late, if she's already too hurt, then you accept that, I said firmly. You don't guilt her into forgiving you. You don't make your redemption her responsibility. You live with the consequences of your choices, and you do better with any other children in your life. But you don't get to demand forgiveness from someone you've harmed. She nodded, wiping her eyes. Thank you for being honest. For not telling me it's fine, that all parents make mistakes. All parents do make mistakes, I said. But there's a difference between mistakes and patterns, between accidents and choices. Your quiet daughter? She's been waiting her whole life for you to choose her. So choose her, starting now. After she left, I sat in the empty bookstore and felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. Not for my own family, that was beyond saving, but for all the families who might be saved by my story, all the quiet children who might be seen, all the parents who might wake up before it's too late. That was the real revenge. Not just surviving, not just thriving, but changing the system so fewer children had to suffer what I'd suffered. 20 years after my rebirth, I stood in the same hospital where Dr. Park had saved my life. The hospital was dedicating a new wing to child advocacy, funded by the Second Chance Foundation. Dr. Park, now the hospital's chief of pediatrics, stood beside me at the ribbon-cutting ceremony. You know, she said quietly, I almost didn't make that CPS report. I thought about it. Your family was wealthy, connected. I thought they'd destroy me for interfering. What changed your mind? You did. When you told me you'd died before. I didn't believe in rebirth or past lives, but I believed in your pain. I believed that you'd been hurt so badly it felt like dying, and I realized if I didn't report it, if I let you go back to them, you'd be telling the truth. You would die. She looked at me. You saved your own life that day, by being brave enough to tell the truth, by being strong enough to ask for help. I was just the first person who listened. You were the first person who believed me, I corrected. The ceremony was beautiful. Parents, children, social workers all gathered to celebrate a place where abused children would be safe, where they'd be believed. Afterward, a teenage girl approached me. She was thin, nervous, with eyes that looked too old for her face. Dr. Yang, I'm here because of you. Because I read your book. Because I called CPS on my parents. My heart clenched. Are you safe now? Yes, I'm with my aunt. It's better. It's so much better. She was crying. But my parents keep calling. They want me to come home. They say they have changed. They say I'm breaking up the family, and sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, if I'm being dramatic like they always said. I took her hands. Listen to me. You are not dramatic. You are not breaking up the family. They did that when they chose to hurt you. And whether they've changed or not isn't your problem. Your only job is to keep yourself safe. But they're my parents. So what? That doesn't give them the right to hurt you. That doesn't mean you owe them endless chances. You get to choose who's in your life. You get to demand safety. And if they can't give you that, you get to walk away. She hugged me suddenly, fiercely. Thank you. Thank you for telling your story. Thank you for showing me it's okay to save myself. After she left, I stood alone in the hospital corridor. This hallway, this building, this was almost died, where I'd been reborn in a different sense. And now it was a place where other children would be saved. Full circle. That night, back in my hotel, I got an email from an unfamiliar address. The subject line read, "From Patricia Yang." I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. Emma, I know you'll probably delete this without reading. I don't blame you. But on the chance you do read it, I want you to know you were right about everything. I was a terrible mother to you. I chose Madison because she was easier to love. She reflected well on me. She made me look good. And you challenged me. You needed things. You made me feel inadequate. So I pushed you away. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it, but I want you to know that I understand now what I did. I destroyed my daughter because she wasn't convenient. I let my child almost die for a balloon. Arch. I chose comfort over love, image over substance, and I lost everything because of it. Madison is lost now too. Angry, addicted, broken. I broke her as surely as I broke you, just in different ways. She was never prepared for a world where she wasn't the center. And when she fell hard. Your father and I are divorced. He blames me for everything. Maybe he's right. I live alone now. No Instagram, no followers, no friends. Just me and the memory of the daughter I destroyed. I don't expect you to care. I just wanted you to know that you won. Completely. Totally. You wanted us to understand what we'd done, and we do. Every day, I wake up understanding it. Every day, I live with it. I hope you're happy, genuinely. You deserve happiness after what we did to you. Goodbye, Emma. Mom. I read the email 3 times. Then I deleted it. She was right about one thing. I didn't care. Her understanding, her regret, her loneliness, none of it mattered. It couldn't undo the past. It couldn't give me back the childhood she'd stolen. It couldn't erase the pain. And more importantly, I didn't need her apology to be happy. I was happy anyway. That was the real victory, not that she was sorry, but that her sorrow was irrelevant to my joy. I'd built a life without her, a better life. A life where I was loved, valued, seen, where children were protected, where abuse had consequences. I'd won, not because they lost, but because I'd survived. 25 years after my rebirth, I retired from direct work with the Second Chance Foundation. I'd spent 2 decades helping children, advocating for them, fighting for them. Now it was time to rest. I moved to a small coastal town in Maine, bought a house overlooking the ocean, adopted 3 rescue dogs, wrote novels under a pen name, dated a kind woman who ran the local bookshop, lived quietly, peacefully, without drama. My grandmother, 97 and still sharp as a tack, visited every summer. Any regrets? She asked one evening as we watched the sunset. No, I said honestly, not one. Not even about Madison? She reached out again last month, asked me to convince you to see her. What did you tell her? I told her that some bridges, once burned, can't be rebuilt, and that you'd earned your peace. We sat in silence, watching the waves. Do you ever think about your first life? She asked. The one where you died? Sometimes. Mostly to remind myself how lucky I am. In that life, I died alone and unmourned. In this life, I'm surrounded by love. In that life, they won. In this life, I won. You did more than win, darling. You changed the world. Thousands of children have been saved because of you. Because of us, I corrected. You're the one who hired the lawyers, who made the case public, who gave me the resources to fight. I gave you the resources. You gave yourself the courage. Another silence, comfortable and warm. Grandma, thank you for believing me, for saving me, for loving me when no one else did. She squeezed my hand. Emma, my darling girl, loving you was the easiest thing I've ever done. You were always worth loving. They were just too broken to see it. That night, after she'd gone to bed, I walked down to the beach. The moon was full, reflecting off the water, turning everything silver. I thought about the girl I'd been, both versions. The girl who'd died waiting for love. The girl who'd been reborn and learned to love herself instead. I thought about my parents, my sister, wherever they were now. Broken, scattered, paying forever for their choices, and I thought about the life I'd built, the foundation, the legislation, the children saved, the woman who loved me, the grandmother who'd always been in my corner, the friends who'd chosen me. I'd taken my pain and transformed it into purpose. I'd taken my death and turned it into life. And I'd learned the most important lesson. You can't make people love you, but you can make sure you love yourself enough for both. The ocean whispered its eternal rhythm. The dogs barked in the distance. In the house behind me, lights glowed warm and welcoming. This was my life, the one I'd built from the ashes of the one they'd burned down. And it was beautiful. I turned back toward the house, toward the warmth and light and love that waited there. Behind me, the ocean erased my footprints in the sand. Forward was the only direction that mattered now. Forward was where I'd been heading all along. And forward, I knew with absolute certainty, was where I'd stay.